Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our final Facebook Live during World Breastfeeding Week. My name is Gabby, and I am joined here with Dr. Zimmerman, who is a pediatrician at Boys Town Pediatrics. And today we're going to be discussing everything about your breastfeeding journey. So, we're answering some final questions that came through this week, and we'll just be talking through all the different aspects about breastfeeding and transitioning, going back to work, all of that stuff. So if you have any questions about breastfeeding for Dr. Zimmerman, go ahead and leave them in the comment section of this video and we can get them answered at the end. And then, of course, the moment you've been waiting for, we are drawing for our giveaway winners. So above this video, you will see an RSVP link. Go ahead and fill that out with your info. And then after this video concludes, I will be announcing the giveaway winners in our Facebook event. So if you go to the events tab and click on breastfeeding basics, it is right there for you. Okay, so Dr. Zimmerman, how are you doing today?
Great, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. We really appreciate you joining for World Breastfeeding Week. And we're going to hop right into the questions. So the first one is, what can parents do if breastfeeding becomes a struggle?
This is a great question because sometimes you feel like you get off to a really good start at the hospital right after the baby's born when you have so much hands-on help. You've got the lactation consultant busy and you've got the nurse there every 2 to 3 hours if you need them. And then all of a sudden you go home and you thought you had the hang of things and all of a sudden it gets hard. And there's two reasons for that. One is that you don't have those people there to help you, so you might feel a little more nervous. But the second is breastfeeding often becomes a struggle, even if you had a baby that was latching really well early on when your milk comes in. And that's because as the breast gets engorged, the nipple gets pushed out and kind of flattened, and it makes it harder for the baby to latch on, which makes them fussy and frustrated at the breast, and then leads you to feeling frustrated and kind of overwhelmed. And so if that's what's happening and you're all of a sudden your baby isn't latching well after they seemed like they kind of had gotten the hang of things and it's the middle of the night and you're really engorged, the first thing you should do is just try to pump for 2 or 3 minutes, and it softens the nipple and pulls out the nipple, and then your baby will latch on easier. If you try those things and you're still not having success, it's okay to just pump and feed the baby that way. Or take a break and let them suck on a clean finger or a pacifier and then come back and try again 5, 10, 15 minutes later. Sometimes you just need a minute to take a breath and maybe get a drink of water and clear your head a little bit, and then trying again goes better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked quite a bit this week on how sometimes moms can feel frustrated or overwhelmed when it comes to this. So I love what you said about just taking a break, give your husband the baby for a minute and refocus and try again. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is, where can I find support if I am struggling to breastfeed?
One of the things that most of the hospitals try to make sure you're aware of as you're leaving with your baby is that you can still access their lactation support services once you've left. Most of the hospitals actually do a follow-up phone call where the lactation consultant will reach out some number of days after you've left and check in how things are going, but also provide you a number that you can call back sooner if you have any questions. The other thing is, as soon as you've left the hospital, your pediatrician's office is a great place to get lactation support. At Boys Town, we have several lactation consultants, and then we also have a really good group of nurses that are certified lactation counselors, which is another extra degree of expertise, but not quite to the level of a lactation consultant. And then you'll find that a lot of the pediatricians or have a special interest in breastfeeding. It's probably a lot of us that have been doing these interviews this week, but we get training on breastfeeding, and then some of us choose to do extra training, and then a lot of us are moms that have breastfed our own babies and have been exactly where you are at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're struggling, and so we want to help too. Omaha is a really great community for breastfeeding support as well. We have multiple different lactation businesses in town where you can access lactation nurses and consultants and get help with same-day services, which is huge because when you're struggling, sometimes you can't wait 2 or 3 days for an appointment. So,
Yeah, definitely. So when should mom begin to supplement with formula?
Early on, we want to save supplementing for medically indicated needs like low blood sugars or excess weight loss where we're concerned about dehydration. We actually discourage moms from trying to breastfeed and immediately formula feed right in the newborn period because that can interfere with your baby's hunger drive, which will interfere with their frequent nursing attempts in bringing your milk in. But we will always let you know if we're worried about dehydration or if there's a low blood sugar issue, then there might be a need early on. Otherwise, when you're coming into clinic frequently those first couple weeks of life, we're going to be checking the baby's weight and running through details about how nursing's going and how many wet and poopy diapers they have. And we're going to let you know if we think milk supply is lagging a little bit from where we want it and we think we need some formula.
Great. I do see we have one question in the comments. We will answer that at the end. And so if anyone else watching has questions, feel free to comment them below. Okay, the next question is, when should I introduce a bottle to my breastfed baby?
This is kind of a tricky one. So early on, we encourage not introducing a bottle because we want to avoid what's called nipple confusion. Bottle is so much easier than breastfeeding in terms of the mechanics for a baby that some babies give up on trying to breastfeed and learn how to do it right and everything if they get a bottle really early, like the first few days of life. But sometimes we need to if we need to supplement. Early on, though, if we have low blood sugars or weight loss, we may actually try to use a syringe and sometimes in a little attached feeding tube and do something called finger feeding if it's just going to be a very brief supplement process. What I usually tell people is let's try to wait until 2 weeks so that we see that baby has really gotten the hang of breastfeeding, we're gaining weight, and we're back past birth weight. If we've made it to those milestones, then I feel comfortable saying your baby's got the hang of breastfeeding. Now we can get a bottle in there every once in a while so they can start working on that skill. If we wait until later than 3 to 4 weeks to introduce the bottle for a breastfed baby, there is a significant chunk of them that decide they don't like bottles at all and won't take it. And so then a breastfeeding parent going back to work, you may find yourself with a baby that doesn't take a bottle during their daycare hours and either wants to nurse all night to make up for it, or you're trying to juggle your schedule to actually leave work to go nurse a couple times, or you have a really kind daycare provider that will syringe feed your baby all day, which is hard when they take big amounts. So.
Right. Gosh, well, that leads us right into our next question is, how can moms best prepare to go back to work when they're breastfeeding?
I think related to kind of trying to build up that supply, a lot of people avoid pumping early on, whereas that's actually a great time to start pumping because it builds your supply from the beginning. So I encourage pumping at least a couple times a day as soon as you start to feel engorged and your milk really starts to come in. And then you'll be able to start stockpiling that milk a little bit. And as your milk supply comes in over a couple weeks, most women have the most milk available early in the morning, kind of early in the day. And so that's a good time where right after you nurse and your baby nursed well, you may still have milk left over. And so you can pump and start storing that a little bit. And then the other thing is going to be introducing the bottle so they get used to a bottle feeding. So somewhere between that 2 and 4 week mark, we want to consistently bottle feed at least one time a day if we know our goal is going to be that this baby is going to drink out of a bottle several times a day in the near future.
Yeah, great. Do breastfed babies typically take longer to sleep through the night, or does it kind of just depend on the baby?
That's a great question that you could probably ask 5 people and get 5 different answers. I know that I spend a lot of time reassuring people in clinic. Breastfed babies can sleep through the night by 6 or 8 weeks, just like formula-fed babies. They may not, though, because it's natural that breastfed babies eat smaller volumes at a time. They often never reach that 6 to 8 ounce bottle size because they tend to eat more 2 to 4 ounces early on and then maybe get up to 4 to 6 ounces later. So because of that, they're not eating as much and therefore may not fill up for quite as long. But I went and looked for some actual literature to answer this question, and I found mixed studies. So some that breastfeeding actually resulted in earlier sleeping through the night, and then some said formula, and then several said it's too close to tell.
Okay, that makes sense. It's pretty close, I'm sure. So what tips do you have for pumping mothers?
So I have a few suggestions as someone that pumped myself several times. So as I mentioned, I actually think it's a good idea to start a little bit of pumping early on, like in those first couple weeks if you can. And then as you're in that 2 to 4 week window, pump at least once or twice a day instead of breastfeeding, and then let your partner or relative or friend or whoever is available to help bottle feed that milk. So your baby starts to get used to the bottle feeding, and you start to get a little bit of an understanding of how much milk you're making at a time and how much milk the baby's probably taking at a time.
Yeah.
Early on, I tell moms when you're pumping, you probably want to store it in 2 ounce bags in the freezer, because most babies are going to be taking 2 to 4 ounces at a time. And so it'll be easy from a thawing standpoint. There's a lot of logistics to pumping and storing breast milk, and I will give you only the basics today. Breast milk can sit out for several hours before it has to get into the fridge. Once in the fridge, it needs to either be fed to the baby or moved to the freezer within 4 to 5 days. And it is okay to combine milk in the fridge from different pumping sessions. So for women that are pumping through the day, as they go on, they can just keep dumping into the same bottle as they want. Once it comes out and it's heated up to feed the baby, then we want to use it within an hour. But if you took it out of the fridge or took it out of the freezer to thaw, you have 24 hours before you need to feed it to the baby or throw it away. And it's liquid gold, so you never want to throw it away.
Yes, yes, that's great. I didn't know all of those different time frames, so that's super helpful. In relation to this question, we did have somebody ask, do you have any good recommendations for breast pumps, and what makes a good pump or a bad pump?
I'll divide that first into, there's kind of different levels of pumps. One kind of pump that I wouldn't recommend being your sole provider, but is sometimes handy to have, is a hand pump. And that's where there's nothing battery, nothing plugged in. That can really come in handy early on when you're just engorged and need to pump briefly to bring that nipple out. Or if you're kind of traveling or at a work meeting or something and you just need to have something quick available. Now, this is not an actual pump, but a Haka, if you're familiar with that, it's a silicone gravity pump. And so while you're nursing on one side, you actually just attach this silicone gravity pump to your other side. And it basically is just collecting the leaking milk. And this is a new invention. It's probably been several years now, but if they would have had this when I nursed my babies, I just cannot believe all the milk that I would have collected. Because moms now tell me, like, they will get more than an ounce just leaking from one side while they're nursing on the other side. And so if you're doing that throughout the day, that would have just ended up in a nursing pad or in your clothing, or, so it's not that you're taking away from what the baby's going to nurse when they go to that side. It's just extra milk. So those are two single side options. Now, if you're going to be pumping for real, like you're pumping and going back to work and you need to efficiently drain your breasts and collect milk for your baby, you need a double-sided hospital grade electric pump. The brand for years was considered kind of the gold standard. But in the last decade, a ton of new pumps have come onto the market. And now there are so many that I am no longer an expert in telling people which one to get. I actually recommend talking to a lactation consultant before you make a purchase, if you're going to be making a purchase. Now, sometimes this is a little bit dictated by what your insurance will cover, and then that kind of helps determine which one you get. But like the lactation consultants stay really up on this and are a great resource for the different pumps. And with each pump, there's tiny tricks that will make it work better for you in terms of the pump frequency, the pump strength, the shield size, making sure it's a good fit for you. So there's a lot going into that shopping decision.
I'm sure. Yes. I love what you said about asking a lactation consultant, because there are so many. It could be overwhelming trying to pick the best one. So that's great advice. Okay. And let's see. We've got about 3 more questions, everyone. So if you have thought of a question, now is the time to leave it in the comments, and then we'll get them answered soon here. Okay, and then do you have any tips for moms who want to combination feed and use both breast milk and formula?
Yeah, if you're planning to, you kind of know from the beginning that's what you're envisioning doing. I would say still go through at the very beginning with nursing only in those first 3 to 5 days of life. So you really bring your milk supply in and get that started before you add the formula. But a lot of women might plan to use formula in combination or end up doing it because their milk supply just isn't quite what they were hoping for, or they're not able to pump often enough with the type of work they do. And so I usually tell people if you need to do a combination of the two, don't mix them together because it's really sad if a baby won't drink the mixture you just made that you put your breast milk in. And so if your baby usually drinks a 4 to 5 ounce bottle, and you only have 2 ounces available of breast milk, I would say just feed them a bottle of the 2 ounces breast milk first, and then make 2 to 4 more ounces of formula and feed them that afterwards. Some people recommend doing the formula at night because they think it fills your baby up better. Again, I don't think there's a lot of studies to prove that, but I've heard people suggest that.
Yeah. Okay. So keep them separate mostly is what to do. Okay, so when mothers are ready to be done breastfeeding, how can they stop?
So if you know that it's time that you are going to wean, or if it has to be time that you're weaning, whether it's, you have a new medication that isn't compatible with breastfeeding or something, if you're able to wean gently over several days, it's going to be easier on your body. If you are mostly pumping during the day, what you can do is gradually decrease your pumping frequency. So if you normally would pump every 3 to 4 hours, drop to maybe like cut out one whole pumping session, or drop to every 4 to 6 hours for a day or two, and then drop to 6 to 8 hours. If you can do it slowly like that, you're less likely to end up with plugged ducts and possibly get mastitis. And it kind of gently sends the message to your body that we don't need to make as much milk anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we do have an additional question in the comments here. This user says, what's good milk supplements to help your milk production? So to increase supply, I think.
That's a great question. First of all, before I would go to like herbal supplements, I would just say, remember that it's supposed to take about 300 calories a day of extra nutrition in a mom's diet to make breast milk. So you need to make sure you're eating well, eating healthy foods, getting a good variety. And you need to be really, really well hydrated because you need all this extra fluid volume. If you want to look into actual supplements to take, fenugreek is the supplement that's probably been around the longest and been studied the most for breast milk production. And it's interesting because it really helped some moms, and then it really doesn't seem to make a difference for other moms, and we don't necessarily know why. Early in my career, a lactation consultant told me, if your mom's going to go get some fenugreek, tell them to take 3 capsules 3 times a day, which is way higher than what the bottle says for whatever general purpose other people take fenugreek for that's not lactation support. And so I usually tell people, if you want to try some of that on your own, try that. Otherwise, I usually refer to a lactation consultant. Some of them actually, as a part of their business, have gone into product lines and have some extra expertise and products available right at their location that they will sell. You can also, if you go online and look, there are some nursing mothers cookies that use special yeast and malt powder, I think, are the 2 ingredients that for some women have been shown to really help with increasing breast milk production. So that's a thing you can try. And then there are teas that are available, like hot tea, like making yourself a cup of tea. If you use one of those, apparently it takes several glasses a day to see a benefit, usually, not just like having 1 cup of tea a night or something.
Right. That's great to know. I mean, any excuse to eat a cookie, right, is worth it. So that's great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, especially if you watched every day this week. It has been a lot of fun chatting with you all and our amazing pediatricians on breastfeeding. And just as a reminder, we do offer free meet and greets with our Boys Town pediatricians. So I will add that link into the comment section. And if you are preparing for your first baby or maybe looking to switch pediatricians, you can go ahead and set up a free meet and greet using that link. And any other additional breastfeeding questions can be sent to our Facebook page, and I will make sure to pass them along. And lastly, I am going to head to the event page after this live concludes to announce our giveaway winners. So keep your eyes out for that post, and we appreciate you tuning in. So Dr. Zimmerman, thank you so much for your expertise. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, everybody. Happy Breastfeeding Month.
Yes, happy Breastfeeding Week. Bye, everybody.